It's Beatty. Today I'm going to be talking about the positive indications of growth and the negative indications of overwork. But before I get into it, Leviathan Sups on leviathansups.com, Leviathan Wellness on Amazon. Then Patreon for text coaching and general support. Peak Male Physique for penis enlargement equipment that is currently out of stock. Give it about a week or two. And then something else. No, actually, that's it. If you haven't noticed, I'm painting my office so everything looks a little different. Eventually, I'm going to actually have a decent little studio. But anyway, let's get into it. There's no script this time because I finished up a consultation call early and wanted to wrap this out before I fulfill 50 plus orders. So, yeah, procrastination at its finest. So I talked about injuries on Saturday. Doesn't really matter because, YouTube is a time void. But I talked about how most injuries are overwork. So let's talk about overwork. Now, some context. The idea of overworked has been talked about, but never truly defined. So if we just go off the research papers that I go off of, overwork starts when you elongate beyond 106% to 108%. So if you get beyond 108%, what happens is that collagen starts to fray completely. So it just destroys the molecule or protein. Therefore, it can't heal because, there's nothing there to heal. So in its place, scar tissue begins to build up to connect the gaps. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid. Okay? Now, a lot of you older heads when it comes to PE, people from PE Gym, Matters of Size, and Thunder's Place would be doing a shit ton of work, if we're talking in a mathematical sense, and this would cause higher levels of potential elongation and strain. So what would happen is you would be doing PE for about 6 months, and then you'll start feeling a bunch of fatigue build up. And this is just in my own experience because I still practice this way largely up until this year, where you'd be doing, say, an hour or two of hanging along with up to an hour of pumping, not on the same day, depending on what you're focusing on. However, that is a shit ton of work if you really want to think about it. When do you train your biceps for an hour a day daily, right? Never. I'm not saying the penis is a bicep muscle or skeletal muscle. What I'm saying is it is still part of your body and it has natural limits, right? And if we continuously push against these limits, we're going to have negative outcomes. So my entire premise lately has been, let's remove the idea of bodybuilding from penis enlargement and focus it on a therapy. First thing I said was there's a mathematical point where we can see that we've done too much work, and that is 108% elongation or strain. So for example, if you are hanging, you are 6 inches. If you get to about 6.4 to 6.5 inches hanging, then there's a chance that you're overworking. 6.4 would be the cutoff. 6.5, you're right at the danger zone. If you get to 6.6, either you didn't measure your length properly to start, let's hope, or you've degraded the tissue so much in your penis that there's nothing really holding it together at that point. And that's how you're able to get 10% elongation. If we look at studies on soft tissues, 10% elongation usually leads to macroscopic failures. So an ACL tear, for example, is a macroscopic failure. We are not trying to do that to our penis, obviously. So that's the first way. Second is we're talking about collagenous tissues still. Collagenous tissues, when they're under undue strain, contract afterwards because it's a stress response. So they don't want to be out and open and vulnerable because obvious reasons, right? No, there's no obvious reason. So soft tissues contract after the fact of extreme tensile loads. So if you need to heal an elongated state, you overdid it. So anyone trying to sell you an all-day stretcher, say you put it on after your gains to guarantee gains, you're doing it wrong. There is always going to be a point of overwork, and that is one of the telltale signs. Now, some of you individuals have a very tight pelvic floor, and that's actually going to make you shrivel after the fact too. So the pelvic floor muscles is what controls the ins and outs of your downstairs. If you can't allow blood into your flaccid penis, it's going to be tight and shriveled. That's either pelvic floor strain or that these muscles are just super tight to begin with, and they're so tensed up when not in use that it doesn't allow any blood into your penis. So the difference between contractile strain response and tight pelvic floor is different, but both need to be treated. One, you stop doing work. The second one requires you to massage your taint, do a whole bunch of yoga exercises, and I'm probably gonna have to do a video on this in the near future on how to treat it. In my opinion, the best way to treat pelvic floor dysfunction is to just get hands-on or use a massage gun and massage your perineum, your taint, your grundle, your downstairs. And that's going to be the best way to go about it because it's skeletal muscle. It's going to respond the same way to massages as normal skeletal muscle. So, contraction after an exercise or workout is a telltale sign of too much work. Also, it's an old argument. There's an old argument that during the initial stages of PE, you will contract. I've even said it in the past. Knowing what I know now, that is most likely bullshit, right? Because if you contract after stretching your, legs out, if your legs feel tight after stretching, you overstretched. Why would your penis be any different? If your knees are sore from stretching and tight after stretching, you overdid it. It's pretty obvious exercise science. So even as a newbie, yeah, you might have some delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, or you might have some beat up joints after the first time you went running. But if you're sore after a workout, especially your ligaments and such, that's a sign of overwork. All your pain after a bodybuilding regimen, for example, should be in your muscles because that was the working tissue. So if you did too many curls and your elbow starts acting up, that's a sign of strain on the tendons in your elbow. So naturally, you're going to need a break because you're not really working the muscles at that point. You're just wearing down your elbow. Not saying that your elbow's doing the work, but that strain is building up on the elbow. You need a break for it to properly heal. Anyway, I think I beat the point home that contraction is bad and you can't hide it. Anyway, this is why I need a script, obviously. We did the mathematical sign of overwork. We did contraction. Let's talk about erection quality. Now that I've shortened my routine so much, I do not have a drop in erection quality. So, after the routine. So, for example, I do 30-ish minutes of length, 10 minutes of tunica release, we're calling it, and then about 10 minutes of pumping 4 days a week. I seldom have horrible boners. The only time I have bad boners now is when I am dehydrated. So if your erection quality drops at all during any of this, that's a good sign you're overdoing it. Additionally, if your morning wood goes away, you are overdoing it. I used to think that, if you had sex before bed, or you masturbated before bed, whatever, and you didn't get morning wood, that's kind of normal. Honestly, if you're doing this right, your penis is going to be signaling so much activity down there that you're going to have nocturnal erections regardless of if you ejaculated recently. And that, I'm just speaking from experience. I've woken up at least 3 or 4 times a night with a raging hard on. Okay? And then the same thing in the morning. So when you're in the perfect storm, so to speak, or when you're in the zone for gains, your penis is going to be highly active because it's trying to get as much nutrients as possible to stimulate this growth. So contraction bad, drop an EQ bad. Then soreness. Now, I go by feel kind of guy. I'm getting grilled by Perfect Swerve, Massive Novelties, and then Hink about the idea that discomfort is such a gradient idea and everyone has a different pain tolerance that is largely a good idea to avoid it. And guess what? They're completely right. It's hard for me to separate my experience from clinical evidence sometimes. So what you should be doing is if it hurts, assess why it hurts. For me, I will have slight discomfort pumping, but that's kind of typical for me, especially because of how much expansion that I'm getting in such a short period of time. It's not like painful, but like it's a good stretch, right? So if I don't know how many times you guys like stretch out your back and then you get a good pop afterwards, it kind of feels like that, just more extreme. If it just straight up hurts, stop. Okay. Anyway, soreness in general should be avoided. So let's say your skin's beat to shit after a massive pumping session. You overdid it. And it's that simple. Next time you use lube, do probably half the time and probably 50% less pressure, or some combination of the two. Less time, less pressure. Go from there. Your skin should not be super beat up after this. If you lose sensation, this is a bit of a mixed bag. When it comes to like vacuum hanging, you're always going to lose a bit of sensation because you're literally just applying a bunch of pressure right to the glands. However, that's only going to last 10 to 20 minutes after coming out of the vacuum cup, because those nerves will be like, oh, I'm getting fresh oxygen, let me turn back on, so to speak. But if you're chronically dulling these senses, that's a stress response, because that means your body is trying to get used to this kind of pain. So it's going to numb those nerves out all the time just so it can tolerate it better. Because what is he saying is like, this part of my body is always under attack, but that's kind of normal now. So let's just ignore it. We don't want that. So if you start getting continuous drops in sensation, really stop what you're doing, reassess. So positive indicators now. We went through a bunch of negatives. First positive indicator, erection quality is constantly increasing. Now, this is going to be a little dependent on health. For example, I started my cardio regimen up again. I'm doing 2 miles like 3 days a week, and then I'm picking up basketball again just to try to get that last push into leanness. So I'm running around a lot. My erections will go up and down depending on how hydrated I am, because it is almost summer at this point. So if your heart can handle it, your penis' erection quality will continuously increase with these exercises, because what we're teaching it to do is hold more blood and releasing a whole bunch of growth factors to make it hold even more blood. So even if like the connective tissues down there didn't get bigger, it's going to get denser. And therefore, it's going to just be a harder, redder erection. That's the first thing. Second thing, frequent erections. Because we're releasing growth factors without straining the penis too much. Just enough to release the growth factors, cause an itty-bitty amount of damage. Fatigue is the correct term. An itty-bitty amount of fatigue. And then we fill in the new space created from the fatigue. So, if you're not getting frequent erections, first, get your hormones. No. First, check your flaccid. No. First, check your pelvic floor, making sure it's not super tight. Easier said than done. If you have issues peeing, like if you can't get it all out in one go, it's probably a sign you have a very tight pelvic floor. Second, I lost my train of thought. Second, get your hormones checked. That's what it was. So if you have low testosterone, for example, your erections are going to be kind of shitty. Therefore, they're going to be less frequent as well. So make sure your testosterone is in the normal range. It doesn't even have to be high, just adequate. After you checked those two out, If you're still having not more frequent erections, either we'll have to see if you need to up your routine to make sure it's enough stimulus. Usually not the case. Or come down in time. We already touched on morning wood a bit, but number 3 is morning wood. The more frequent your nocturnal erections are, the higher activity of growth, right? Because we're pulling in more nutrients. Therefore, the more active your penis is while you're sleeping, and that's when you grow, the vast majority of the time, the better. So if you don't wake up with morning wood, we're doing something probably horribly wrong, unless you had a huge rager and didn't sleep that well the night before. Talking about sex, not necessarily alcohol. Another thing, cut out alcohol as much as you can. One of my clients drinks relatively a lot, and he has issues gaining, and I think that's one of the main reasons. Because, you're literally poisoning your body. Try to limit your contact with poisons. Anyway, I digress. Morning wood. It's that simple. You have a lot of them, a lot of nocturnal erections, a big morning wood. You're on the right track. It doesn't have anything to do with having to pee when you wake up. It might cause a bit of an erection, but if that's the only reason why you have morning wood, you're doing something wrong. Another thing, I still get these nocturnal erections and stuff, despite being a frequent masturbator. So if you're doing this right, you can outpace the drop in nocturnal erections from over-ejaculation, for example, because the signal is so strong. That's what you really want to go for. Not saying you want to masturbate like 3 to 4 times a day, but for just a guideline, that's how strong you want these nocturnal erections to be, that they can circumvent any negative impacts on erection quality. Okay, then we have sensitivity. Now, this is a bit of a mixed bag, and it depends on how often you get off, but in most cases, your sensitivity should slowly increase, because again, it comes down to the growth factors. First of all, let's assume you are getting bigger. Things are going to have more sensation and feel tighter. Therefore, it's going to feel better. Second of all, the growth factors are actively stimulating your nerves to get bigger, thicker, denser, which will then in turn increase the signal. Therefore, you should be more sensitive. Now, days that you do PE, part of the stress response is a bit of a dulled nerves, and it's a mixed bag. Some people get super sensitive after pumping, and some people will numb out. If you're numbing out, it might be a sign of overwork. Just keep an eye on it. If it's near what everyone else is doing now, not say 20 years ago, then it's probably nothing to worry about. But in my case, I'll have days where I'm very sensitive after pumping and then not so much. So it might literally just go day by day for you. And then finally, last positive indicator for growth is shown changes on the ruler. And that does not necessarily mean bone press erect length grew that month. But for me, I stopped measuring my erect length as often because it was kind of feeding my body dysmorphia a bit. So I've been doing my stretch flaccid probably once a week just to make sure I'm having positive indications and change. So if your stretch flaccid is growing, there's a good chance that your penis is also, or your erection's also growing, as long as you have enough blood to fill the thing. So for me, my erect length trails my stretched length by about 1/8 of an inch. If that number's trending in the right direction, 99% of the time, my erect length is also trending in the right direction. Another sign for positive growth. And don't really get too caught up on this because it's an external factor, but whatever your partner says. So if you feel bigger today, that's a positive sign. Either your erection quality increased, therefore it's harder for them to push back against you, or you did just in fact get bigger, and that's the entire goal, right? So keep your partner in mind, but with all self-improvement, it is almost paramount not to focus on the external factors, because you'll end up in this weird motivation loop where it's up to their satisfaction and not your own internal satisfaction. I know a lot of us are externally motivated to start. All I'm asking is a lot of you guys focus on the internal motivation to find this fulfillment. And if you look at a bunch of philosophies and Buddhism, Hinduism, it all starts with internal self-worth and not the external self-worth because you can't control it. Anyway, I kind of threw a lot of information at once with no script. So I'm going to watch this in post, go from there, finish procrastinating, get a bunch of orders out. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, because, YouTube likes to change things willy-nilly. If you want to support me, get something for yourself, Leviathan Sups. We'll have a restock very soon on the little things with a new product out very soon. Patreon for text coaching and general support. Peak Male Physique for penis enlargement aids and penis enlargement equipment. Again, that's going to be restocked in 1 to 3 weeks. About to burp. Maybe not. What do you know? There it is. That's about it for today, guys. So I will see you in the next one. I might do a live stream this Friday. We'll see. All right. Talk to you later.